The galactic survey ship Distant Horizon had protocols for everything. Protocols for first contact. Protocols for atmospheric breaches. Protocols for when the ship's AI developed a personality quirk. But nowhere in the 3,000-page manual did it explain what to do when apex predator juveniles became obsessed with human sandwich construction. Heather Chen had been the xenobiologist on duty when the Kravesh delegation arrived. The Kravesh were magnificent. 2.5 meters of scaled muscle, retractable claws that could shred titanium, and a hunting culture that had dominated their homeworld for millennia. They were also, diplomatically speaking, incredibly important. Their species controlled 17 star systems and had military technology that made human defenses look like children's toys. What the briefing materials hadn't mentioned was that the delegation would bring their cubs. There were 3 of them: Wrath, Sasala, and young Keth. By Kravesh standards, they were practically infants, only 40 standard years old. By human standards, they were terrifying carnivores who stood taller than most men and possessed enough bite force to crack a shuttle's hull plating. The incident began in the observation lounge. Heather had been preparing her lunch, a simple turkey sandwich with lettuce, tomato, and mustard. She'd been alone, or so she thought, humming softly as she layered the ingredients with practiced efficiency. The bread went down first, then the meat, folded precisely, vegetables arranged just so, the second slice of bread placed on top with a gentle press. She'd turned to find all 3 Kravesh cubs standing motionless behind her, their vertical pupils dilated to maximum width. "Oh!" Heather had yelped, nearly dropping her plate. "You startled me!" Wrath, the eldest, had tilted his massive head. What is that ritual?" "This? It's just a sandwich. My lunch." "Explain sandwich," Sasala demanded, her tail swishing with what Heather would later learn was intense curiosity. And so, with 3 predator cubs hanging on her every word, Heather had explained the concept of sandwiches. Bread as structure, fillings for flavor and nutrition, the importance of layering, the philosophical debate between cutting diagonally versus straight across. The cubs had been entranced. That had been 3 weeks ago. Now, Zachary Torres, the ship's cultural liaison, stood in Heather's lab with a data pad and an expression that suggested he'd seen something that had broken his understanding of reality. "You need to come to the Kravesh quarters," Zachary said. "Now!" "What's wrong? Is someone hurt?" "No, nothing like that. Just, you need to see this." The Kravesh family quarters were located in the ship's high-gravity section. As Heather and Zachary approached, they could hear excited clicking and hissing, the sound of young Kravesh in animated conversation. The door slid open. The room had been transformed into what could only be described as a shrine to sandwich construction. Diagrams covered the walls, crude but earnest illustrations showing the layering process. A table in the center held what appeared to be sculptures? No. Heather realized with dawning horror and delight. Those were sandwiches, giant, carnivorous, absolutely insane sandwiches. Wrath had constructed his masterpiece from slabs of raw vreth meat, each piece the size of Heather's head, stacked 5 high with some kind of purple vegetable matter jutting out at angles. The whole thing was held together with what looked like metal spikes. "Human Heather!" Keth squeaked, bounding over with alarming speed. "Look! We make human food!" Sasala gestured proudly to her creation, a circular arrangement of meat chunks surrounding a center pile of bone fragments. "This is sandwich with lettuce. The bones are lettuce." "We have been practicing," Wrath explained solemnly, as though discussing advanced particle physics. "The human method of food preparation is elegant, strategic. It demonstrates planning, creativity, and—" He paused, searching for the word, "culture." Zachary made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh or a strangled cry. Heather couldn't tell. "You've been making sandwiches?" she asked carefully. "Attempting to make," Wrath corrected. We understand the principle. Structure, then filling, then structure. But our sandwiches keep... He gestured helplessly at the meat tower. Falling. That's because... Heather stopped herself. The cubs were looking at her with such genuine hope, such earnest desire to understand. That's because sandwiches need to be proportional. The bread has to be strong enough to hold the filling. The structure must support the contents, Sasala breathed. Of course, it is like pack hierarchy. For the next hour, Heather found herself teaching sandwich construction to 3 apex predator juveniles. Zachary documented everything, murmuring occasionally about how the xenoanthropology department would never believe this. The breakthrough came when Heather suggested they scale down, smaller pieces, thinner slabs, actual edible proportions. Keth created the first successful cravache sandwich, 2 palm-sized pieces of meat with a thin layer of that purple vegetation between them. He held it up triumphantly, then bit down. His eyes widened. The flavors combine, he whispered. They are separate, but together. That's the point, yes, Heather said, feeling oddly proud. Within days, the entire cravache delegation had learned of the cubs' hobby. Within weeks, sandwich construction had become a minor cultural phenomenon among young cravache throughout their diplomatic mission. They called it human food art and discussed the philosophical implications of combining separate elements into a unified whole. The cravache ambassador personally thanked Heather. "You have given our young ones something we did not know they needed," she said, her predatory features softening with something that might have been a smile. "Not just food, but the understanding that culture is built in layers, that different ingredients can coexist, that structure and creativity are not opposites." Heather stood on the observation deck later that evening, watching the stars slide past. Zachary joined her, holding 2 sandwiches. "Turkey and Swiss," he offered, handing her one. "Made with proper proportions." "Thanks." Heather took a bite, savoring the familiar taste. "Do you think this is how it starts? Real cultural exchange? Not with treaties or trade agreements, but with sandwiches?" Zachary considered this. "The cravache are apex predators. They've conquered worlds. They respect strength, strategy, and efficiency." He gestured with his sandwich. "And you showed them that humans possess all 3. We just apply them to lunch." From somewhere in the ship's depths came the sound of excited clicking. The cubs were probably making midnight sandwiches again. "Humanity, yeah," Heather said softly. Zachary grinned. "Humanity? Fuck yeah." And somewhere in the galactic database, a new entry was being filed. Humans, dangerous not despite their compassion, but because of it. Approach cultural exchange with caution. May result in unexpected sandwich adoption.